Hey there everybody, Rain Lionheart here. Welcome back to the channel. So last video lecture, we wrapped up talking about how to create exciting worlds, how to create worlds that stand out, why they stand out, how to make them stand out, what makes them exciting and why. We talked about all the different building blocks that go into creating an exciting world. We started off with the foundations. We talked about the mood, theme, and atmosphere, or excuse me, thematics. We talked about the way that the world looks, how it feels, what's the textures of the world, the way that the world is presented. We talked about, essentially I used the analogy of giving them the visa and the brochure. And then we got into the more in-depth conversation, which was last video lecture, the video lecture before that was talking about the foundations of world creation. This previous video was about giving them the passport to actually enter the world, and we really went deep into the mechanics of the world, talking about what are all the different aspects, facets, and all the different details that make up your world. Everything from fauna and flora to animalia to the laws to how death is handled to things like, are there conflicts? What's the weather like? What's the architecture of the world? You have to kind of treat it like this world has never not existed, that it always has. And I'll give an example of that in just a second here, before we get into my favorite, which is character creation and world immersion. So if we just take a look back, we can see here in best practice that you have to ask yourself basic yet detailed questions. So feel free to pause the video or take a screenshot of these questions here and write down the answers to these questions as best to your ability and in much detail as you possibly can. But these are the things that we discussed last lecture video. But now we can move on to my bread and butter, which is my favorite, because I write for video games and movies and television. And if you know anything about video game writing, this is all you do, which is character creation, world immersion. So this is my bread and butter. Like, this is where we're going here. I mean, I love character creation, world immersion. I know that sounds very condescending and sarcastic, but you just have no idea. Guys, you have no idea. This is all I do. This is all I do. So this is my bread and butter because, again, I write for video games. And if you know anything about game development, especially game writing or screenwriting or just film writing in general, if you know anything about the actual writing of creating a piece of media or work, or just even writing a novel, this is it. This is the bulk here. This is it. Character creation and world immersion. And from here on out, this is where we take off the little kid gloves. From here on out, we're putting on the big boy gloves, and the kids' gloves are off, and we're gonna get really deep into it. So roll up your sleeves. It's gonna be really fun. I'm very excited. And I'm going to be going back and forth between the slides for a while to kind of demonstrate something to you. But, of course, I don't want to spoil what that is just yet. But I just want you to know I'll be going back and forth. So don't think that I'm just doing this for no reason. Don't think I'm doing this for no reason, because that's annoying. But I will be doing it for a reason. It's also silly. But by the way, do you guys like the letterboxing at the top and bottom of the video here? Do you guys like that? Do you like the letterboxing? Also known as the matte bars, M-A-T-T-E, the matte bars. In film, you use those when you render your movie, or you render your cutscenes or whatnot. Not just for cinematic quality, but also for aspect ratio and for user focus as well. So like when you're sitting in a movie theater, those black bars are there to keep your attention on the center, and they're used for a variety of other things as well. It's also to keep out unwanted frames and whatnot. But anyways, if you guys like that, let me know in the comment section below. I've been using it a little more recently, and I want to use it a lot more on the rest of my videos as well. Might as well put my film major my film degree, not my film major, my film degree to good use. My major was in business and entrepreneurship. I had a minor in marketing and advertising. Anyways. But I did take a ton of creative writing classes, film classes, etc. Anyways, so we're going to talk about character creation and world immersion. it does not matter what genre of story you are going to tell, whether it would be fantasy, historical, crime drama. Your character must represent and be the face of the character you want to portray. Your character should be synonymous with the title. Noctis Lucius Caelum from Final Fantasy 15, Sora from Kingdom Hearts, Mickey Mouse, Disney, Master Chief, Halo, Kratos, God of War, Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Jak and Daxter. I mean, when you think Cyberpunk 2077, you think Johnny Silverhand or V on the front cover. When you think The Witcher, you think Geralt. When you play Mario, right? When you play Zelda, you think of Zelda and Link, especially Link. I mean, you have to create a character that's going to be the face of your story, going to be the brand. I mean, when I look at my own work, Emerald Gardens, I mean, Warwick Leon Riverbelt in the top left there, he's in the top left. That's the face of the franchise. That's the face right there. I guess I mean Dreyfus and Phelan as well. Phelan is underneath Warwick, and then Dreyfus is on the far right. The man in the middle is the bodyguard to the Riverbelts. The best bodyguard to the Riverbelts. I mean, Al Pacino is a legend in Hollywood, and he's synonymous with The Godfather and Scarface. So you have to really create a character that's going to be the face of your own universe and stories. I mean, when I think of American Hustle, again, another work that I've written, and of course I keep a lot of these published because they're meant for video games, but unpublished because I keep these for video games. When I look at American Hustle and I think of the 88th Street Crew, not to be confused with the 88th Street Rollers, the actual gang, but the 88th Street Crew. Not that they're inspired off of, they just happen to be coincidentally the same name, or have the same number, the 88th Street Crew and the 88th Street Rollers. When I think of that, I think of R.J. Parker. And I think of the mascot, which is a raccoon with a bandana, right? When I think of Emerald Gardens, I think of Warwick Leon Riverbelt. When I think of the Moonlight Chronicles, I think of Kite High Cloud. K-H-Y-T, High Cloud. Not K-I-T. When I think of American Dollar, I think of Ethan Carter. When I think of Vigilance, I think of James Callahan. So these are all different works that I've written, and I kind of keep them to myself, but of course also to use them later. But that's not the point. The point is, when you write work, it doesn't matter how much work you write. You have to, by God, you have to have a character that's going to be the face of your story. So it doesn't matter if you're writing a fantasy novel like Silas from Emerald Gardens on the left here, or if you're writing a historical, ancient historical drama like this the Samurai here in the middle, or if you're writing a crime drama and crime thriller like Scarface and with Al Pacino as Scarface. You know, Tony Montana, I mean, it's legendary. I mean, you think of The Godfather, you think of Marlon Brando. You need to have a face of your brand. You need to have a face of your company. You need to have a face of your you need to have a mascot. And the mascot of your story is going to be your characters. So you have to have a character that should be synonymous with the title and the world and feel as though they belong. And this is why visuals help register the overall thematic of the world, which is why I like video games and movies and television a lot more than physical writing. I actually wrote an article, and I'll put it up on screen now. I wrote an article talking about why you should add art to your creative writing, and one of those very reasons of doing so was actually because it will give the viewer a more comprehensive understanding of your world and the type of people within it, and give them a better idea. But of course, I also talk about how we're in a very hyper-visualistic society and how you don't want to give too much room for interpretation. You only want to give enough to where they can use their own imagination to kind of fill in the blanks of the world that you have without actually you having to write down every single feature. And even then, there's going to be gaps, and you just can't avoid that. But with a visual medium, you're able to see what someone is talking about. Anyways, you need to have, you don't need to have visuals, but again, this is why visuals help to register the overall thematic and style of the world, and this is why you need to have a face of your world, because again, it is going to be what represents your story. I have a phrase that goes, your story is a mirror, what you stare at stares at you back. And this is where I'm going to show you really clever writing, really amazing writing. And I'll explain why in just a bit. But side note, your character or characters should be a representation of the world around them, yet alien and foreign to the rest of it. We'll get into that, definitely. Don't worry, it is in the lecture. It will come up, but just keep that in the back of your mind. So anyways, when I say your story is a mirror, what you stare at stares at you back, it sounds hokey and it sounds kind of like vague and mysterious, but it really does have a meaning. What that essentially means is that when you write a story, when you go and reread, when you proofread, or even when you're in the middle of writing, it is going to click. It's going to be a question. It's going to be oh, I should probably write this. Oh, what about that? Oh, maybe I should write this about X, Y, and Z. Or, oh, I wrote this. Well, then how does this, whatever I wrote, affect what I've written in the past? And now do I have to edit the lore? These are things that happen. Essentially, this phrase is shower thoughts. That's what it is. It's shower thoughts. Have you ever been in the shower and go, oh, fuck, that was a really good comeback? Or have you ever been, like, doing the dishes and you go, son of a bitch, I should have said that to her. She would have shut up real quick and I would have won that argument. Or have you ever been playing video games and then it's only after you get eliminated, you go down, you die, you get revived, or it's only after you lose the match you go, damn it, I should have done this. That is what this is, but in creative writing. Your story is a mirror. What you stare at stares at you back. When you're reading what you've written, it's going to ask you questions. It's going to tell you what gaps need to be filled in. It will tell you what needs to be said. And it sounds crazy, but it is the truth. And I'll explain it here now. I had a problem for the longest time in Emerald Gardens about there was an incident within the river belts. So a quick recap, essentially in the world of Emerald Gardens, there are many different dynasties who rule different kingdoms within the world, well, within the continent of Galaheim, okay? So the most prestigious, powerful, essentially the main kingdom that my story focuses on. I mean, I focus on all the other kingdoms, there's 8 of them, but I'm talking about how the main character comes from, like, kind of the main kingdom, like, this is kind of like the focal point when it comes to the kingdoms, is the river belts and how they rule over Celestia ad Luna. For the longest time, I had an issue. In the lore, I had written the following. Don't let his boyish looks deceive you. While he does have the look of that of a child, he is much a man. With pure white snow-colored hair, I said pure snow white. Oh yeah, okay. So with pure white snow-colored hair, signature of the river. We do take 2. Try saying this 10 times fast. With pure snow white colored hair, a signature of the river belts, along with their notably long eyebrows and sharp, almost knife-edge sharp angled ears. Warwick has spiked long hair with perfect texture and complexion of soft skin, as if touching lush grass. His cheeks are slightly puffy and his lips are thin. His majestic blue eyes hold power, gaze, and allow him to be open for those to marvel at the sparkling windows of his emotion. Okay, so before I get into his description, so in here, I wrote that having pure snow white colored hair, having noticeably long eyebrows, and almost knife-edge sharp angled ears, I noticed 2 things. 1, I established that this is by implication, a genetic trait of the river belts. So that means that you'll know. So again, like not to use any racial connotations here, but have you ever had someone go up to you, or like you're in conversation, or like maybe your parents have said it, or like your grandparents especially may have said, you know how you can tell if someone's Jewish? You know how you can tell if someone's a Nazi? You know how you can tell if someone's German, if someone's Italian or Spanish, right? There's certain attributes that may or may not give off the particular stereotype that may or may not be true for particular races. It's the same thing here, right? So in this case, the river belts, they all have white hair. They all have sharp angled knife-like ears. They all have long arched eyebrows. They got the jawline. It's the continuous genetic trait for the river belts. At least the offspring and the children and the men, right? Particularly. But of course, like if it was a woman, it would be the same exact way. You know, the angled jawline, and then the sharp ears and the arched eyebrows, etc. And we know this to be true because when we look at Warwick here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see he has snow white colored hair. He's got the knife-edge sharp ears, and you can see he has that nice, perfectly curved, even though his cheeks are a little puffy, he's got that curved, almost a perfectly angled jawline, right? It kind of almost, the chin almost juts out just a tiny bit. If we look here at the rest of the river belts, except for the man in the middle, he is he is related to the river belts in some way because again, the river belt clan is part of the Luminari race, and the Luminari race is a wide range of elves. But regardless, if you look at Warwick in the top left here, you can see the resemblance to him. Phelan down here, they both have they both got the blue eyes, they both have the white hair, they both have the sharp angled ears, they both almost have the same type of skin tone and complexion. Phelan might be a little darker, but they typically have the same. If you look at again the bodyguard of the Riverbelt family here in the middle, the most fearless and the most accredited bodyguard here of the Riverbelts, again, it's that white hair and the angled ears, and he's got he's got kind of this ovular jawline here. Same thing with Dreyfus, but pay attention to Dreyfus. He doesn't have the white hair, does he? But he does have the jawline. He does have the blue eyes. He does have the angled nose. The angled nose, and he does have the sharp knife edge ears. So in the world of Emerald Gardens, one of the things that happens is the father, Garrett, has an affair with Queen Justinia from Sable Crest Kingdom. Justinia gets pregnant, and she gives birth to a boy. Now, that boy is named Aaron. Or Aaron, yeah. Like, you could say Aaron, like Era, like Era, or like Aaron, Aaron, Aaron. You could do that, but it's Aaron. Like an ear, like a iris. Anyways, so Aaron is supposed to be the affair child between Queen Justinia and Garrett Riverbelt. But there's a problem. Although Aaron has the knife edge ears and the jangled. Take two. Although Aaron does have the angled jawline, he does have the kind of the perfect angled nose, he does have the blue eyes, he does have the knife edge ears. He does not have the white hair. And for the longest time, I said, well, how am I going to make that work? Because Dreyfus and Garrett are related, because they're brothers. Dreyfus Riverbelt, Garrett Riverbelt are brothers. However, Garrett is only half Luminari. So then that means that his father, or his mother, one of the two, went outside of the Luminari race and had two children with someone who's not Luminari. Now, in the Luminari race, they believe that in the event that this were to happen, if you marry and have children with a fully blooded Luminari, a full-blooded Luminari woman, or man, depending on your perspective, you have now cleansed the bloodline. It's okay. Everything's back to normal. Because half of the Luminari is now reunited with full Luminari. So even though you do have even though you do maybe have some resonant genes, if you will, of someone who's not Luminari, the fact of the matter is that person's still half Luminari, so half meets full, and now you have, technically speaking, the bloodline has been cleansed, because now, even though, you'll still have more Luminari in you than you would the other half. And that's kind of how they view it. So, Garrett married a Luminari woman, okay, Serene, and she gave birth to Phelan, which is the oldest child, and Warwick, who is the younger brother. So now all is right in the world. You have full luminari, and then you have two full luminari. Again, it's technically not, but you have more luminari in you than the opposite half, so you're considered to be more luminari. Therefore, you're luminari. And then above them, you have the mother who's full luminari, you have the father who's half luminari. And then, of course, the uncle, the brother, is full luminari. But how come he doesn't have the white hair? Well, the thing is, in the luminari race, there is I'm not going to use the words a medical condition, because that's that's a little, I don't know. I don't know if it's like soft language or like if it feels it's a little degrading. It's a little degrading. So I'll say that there's a genetic mutation where you have the ability to not have the white hair. However, there are some caveats. So normally, again, the river belts, their genetics are all white hair. The luminari, you could have any hair that you want. I mean, typically it's usually of a pale colored, so it's rather like a blonde or a pale brown or a birchwood color or a like the actual pale tan, not the outer exterior of the wood, just the white. Even though you could have white, I mean, the Riverbelt clan is a luminari race, and therefore they have white hair. But you could have black, you know, whatever. However, there is a genetic mutation within the luminari race where your hair color may not be subject to what you're supposed to have. So, for example, the majority of the luminaries all have usually closer to white hair. So, well, I mean, not all of them, but like pretty much. Again, you could have like a cream color, you could have a birch color, you could have a manila color, you could have a pale brown color, very pale brown, almost like horse hide, like a speckled horse, in terms of the light color. You could have white hair, and typically it's used of the lighter color. Okay, you have very pale blonde, but blonde nonetheless. I mean, if we look back at the advisor Silas, I mean, his hair is white, but you could see that there's some gold in there. There's some yellow. There is a yellow tinge to his hair, especially near the bottom. So he's technically like a blondish yellow, a pale blonde, if you will. That being said, again, it's that racial factor, and of course, if you're related to the river belts, you're going to get that white hair. But there is the possibility that you don't get your white hair for a few reasons. Rather, A, the genetic mutation to where you do not get the white hair. And in this case, because, Garrett had the white hair, Dreyfus didn't have the white hair, and Garrett and Dreyfus were born around the same time, but the woman clearly was not brown-haired, because the male had to have been. So, or excuse me, the male was white-haired, and the woman had to have been brown or blackish, or black hair. But the thing is that there's two things. Rather, as you get older, that hair color that you once had then turns white. Two, the genetic mutation to where you don't have white hair, and rather, as you get older, it turns white. Or through puberty, you go through kind of like a shedding process, almost like chemotherapy for cancer. But instead of having your hair fall out due to radiation, your hair falls out because the genetic roots of your hair actually start to take over. So your body recognizes, wait a minute, this is not the right color. We need to change that. And the way that this works for the luminari is the hair falls out, and then the body says, okay, well, let's regrow it. It's kind of like saying, let's restart this for a minute. But there's also another thing. In Dreyfus's youth, when he was a lot younger, he traded his hair for a darker color. And the way that you do that is by sacrificing your white hair so that you could gain a type of magic. And that type of magic is is kind of looked down upon and forbidden, if anything. It's kind of like, and I want to be tasteful when I say this, it's the equivalent of giving up your racial identity to assimilate to another racial identity, and that is a big no-no in the Riverbelt clan, or just in Luminari in general. That's just a very big no-no. But he did it as an act of rebellion against his parents, and because Dreyfus has always been kind of the... He's always been kind of more of the ends justify the means type of person. And besides, he may have had white hair in his youth, but it was nothing like again, because his mother was darker haired, so it was almost kind of a grayish. But that was as close to white as he was going to get. And again, gray is a lot closer to white than black is. So anyways, he traded that grayness for white. Well, this is interesting, because now we have a rumor, or, well, not a rumor, but we have a problem here in the Riverbelts where Garrett did, in fact, sleep with another woman, even though he's married, Queen Justinia from Sablecrest. And then a child is born, and even though he does have and I'll put a picture of Erin on the screen, even though he does have the knife-edge ears, and even though he does have the chiseled jawline, he's got the perfect shaped nose, he's got the blue eyes, notice that he doesn't have the white hair. And for so long, I was, hold on, for so long, if I can get to the page here, for so long, I have been thinking about, well, shit, you know, I have a plot hole here. And then, of course, as I began to experiment with it, I realized, you know, maybe there's more to this than what I thought. And perhaps maybe the antagonist from a young age has always been kind of a bit of a troublemaker, and he's always been more of a person that didn't care about something like how the color of your hair represents your identity. It's about having something more tangible that asserts your power and dominance. And I played around with that for a minute, and I said, you know, Dreyfus's wife died of an illness originally written, and I don't think I've changed it, but originally written, his wife dies a very violent and sick death, and it's very painful to watch, and he has to sit there and watch it happen. And he has a son, Reyes, and he, of course, raises him as you know, as the best that he can. But what's interesting is, who's to say that Dreyfus did not drink some sort of potion or use magic to impersonate his brother, to commit the affair, and then to have Justinia give birth to the child, and now suddenly there is now a new Riverbelt. But even he will say, well, that is a bastard child. That is a child not allowed in this clan, not in this rulership. He is not a direct descendant. And you have everybody saying, Garrett, you're an asshole. You slept with this girl, you got her knocked up. Everybody believes it except for Silas. Silas is the only person who doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe that it ever happened. Garrett said to Silas, well, I did do it. I did. I mean, I'm not going to hide from it. I did do it. But Silas says, let me cook. He goes, interesting. Let me cook. Okay. You slept with this chick, right? Yes. Yes, I did. Okay. So why doesn't he have the white hair? Well, Dreyfus doesn't have white hair. Yes, but predominantly he would have had white hair. I mean, Justinia is an ombre blonde. So, like, it's blonde, but then as it goes down, it gets darker and darker, right? So, he would have had maybe a grayish pale kind of color? Well, perhaps so, but regardless, I mean, he's genetically related. No, what I believe happened is you slept with this queen. You slept with Queen Justinia. I will believe you on that. I don't believe he got her pregnant, though. I believe that what happened was you slept with her once, and then, you realized what you did, and you were like, I could never look at you again. I could never be in the same room as you again. I'm disgusted with you and myself. And then you returned home. I believe that bastard son of a bitch, your brother, I believe he impersonated you, went back, fucked that girl, got her pregnant, pinned it on you. Nobody believes him. Nobody believes him at all. No one believes him. Everyone goes, you're just loyal, you're loyal, you're loyal. That's all you are. You're just blinded by loyalty. No one's going to believe you. No one believes you. And everybody just dogpiles on Garrett. Turns out, Silas was right. Silas was right. He was right from the beginning, and he knew it. And when he was going to expose it, Dreyfus kills him. Dreyfus had him killed. And so, this is what I'm talking about. When you go and look at your writing, when you look at how to capture that whole, your story is a mirror, what stares at you back. This is what I'm talking about. When you reread your work, when you go and read it, and you think to yourself, there's plot holes. There's something I gotta get through. Hold on, wait, but the logic doesn't make sense here. It will tell you the path that you need to take. It will tell you the path that you need to take. And that's exactly what Dreyfus did. From the very beginning, Dreyfus has been trying to seize the throne of Celestia and Luna because he and his brother do not get along. He and Garrett don't get along. He's hated Garrett because he's half Luminari. He's not full Luminari, he's half Luminari. I mean, technically, Dreyfus is also, half Luminari as well, but he's more Luminari than Garrett. So, because again, you can look at, I'll put two on the screen now. You can clearly see that one of them doesn't exactly match the other. So one of them is a little more Luminari than the other here. And so he's hated him forever. They've always had their differences. Even though that they were quite close, Dreyfus always kind of had a disdain for his brother. Kind of like a, why do you get to be in that seat and not me? And it's this seated jealousy. And so from the very beginning, when he figured out, he was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to destroy the family from the inside. That's what I'm going to do. And it starts with small things. And then it leads up to that, where he impersonates his brother and knocks up Queen Justinia. And then he then denies, oh yeah, that's all you, dude. You, right? Jesus, even when you were a 20-year-old, or when you were an 18-year-old, you were running around, doing all this nonsense. Of course, typical you, Garrett, typical you. Always sleeping with all these women, this, that, and the other. And that's also another thing about the River Belts, is they do tend to sleep around a lot. But, he uses the stereotype of, or not, well, I guess not stereotype, but he uses the kind of the River Belt, how do I say, the negative, kind of they're all kind of dogs, they all sleep around, etc. They're always, getting laid. He uses that to his advantage. And so from small things to being a homewrecker and destroying the family, and then eventually he comes out and says, Garrett did this, Garrett did this, Garrett did this, he did this, and he goes on a laundry list, and then he makes sure to check off, sleeping with somebody outside the Luminaries and outside, the clan, and now look at this, he doesn't deserve to be emperor, I do. And then he challenges him to a trial by resolve. He kills Garrett in combat, and that completely destroys the family. And now, of course, what also makes it worse is when Phelan, the older brother, learned that his father made this mistake of sleeping with Justinia, he's like, well, now I don't want the title of emperor. I'm not going to have a title of somebody who goes and completely betrays my family like that. You hurt me, you hurt my mother, you hurt Warwick. like you completely ruined our image because again, like the river belts, there's a whole thing about the river belts and how the whole dynasty is very like about face and whatnot. So he's very angry, very disgraced, very upset, and he's like, I don't want the emperorship. And that is kind of the ultimate fuck you to like your parents in at least here in the Emerald Gardens universe. That's kind of the ultimate fuck you. It would be the equivalent of like not signing that your parents' will in trust. That's essentially what it is. It's a giant fuck you. And he's like, I don't want it. So now it has to fall to Warwick, and Warwick is like, well, I guess. I don't know. Well, somebody has to, but I mean, does it have to be me? But it falls to Warwick by default because Phelan relinquishes the title. He renounces it. So now that his father is killed, Garrett's killed in trial by resolve, Warwick is now emperor. So it's just like and Silas also knew Silas also knew that if Silas knew that if Dreyfus killed Garrett in a trial by resolve, he knows that both Phelan and Warwick would jump into battle as kind of a post-tribute and want to fight Dreyfus. Dreyfus would have killed off both Phelan and Warwick. So now the only people who are left to be in the lineage of the Riverbelts is Dreyfus, Ravis. You have the son of Dreyfus is Reyes, not Ravis, Reyes, and then you have Serene. And I guarantee you, Dreyfus probably would have wanted to, smash Serene. I'm pretty sure he would have wanted to take that woman for himself too. So it was like an entire coup. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is I was missing the bridge from how do I have this entire setup for the storyline here, because then eventually Warwick is put under a curse where he sleeps for 5 years, and so now it's like, how do I fix this pivotal moment within the story? And again, I went back and I read what I wrote. The story is a mirror. What you stare at stares at you back. It will tell you what is missing. It'll tell you how to fix the problem. It'll tell you what needs to be said. It'll tell you what character needs to be explained or erased or modified. Your story will tell you what to do. When you're writing a story, you're not just writing words on a page. What you're doing is you're writing a living entity. And that living entity is going to tell you, this is what I need in order to be crafted. And you have to listen to it. And it's the same thing with characters. Characters aren't characters. They're people like you and I. They're real. Characters are real. They are real people. I know it sounds stupid, but like it's true. Characters are real people. They're just as real as you and I. And they do real things. And so you have to really think about what is it that your character does. And how and not only just what your character does, but also how your character is involved in the things that happen. So, again, looking at how to capture in writing, I talk about how he wears a white adorned coat that holds white and gray heraldry over a patterned shirt. I talk about how he has silver moon armor on his left shoulder. He wears a karakaro, which is a traditional karakaro, which is basically like a shoulder cape, essentially. I talk about how he has an X, like the front of his belt is in the shape of an X, and on that X he has the family crest. I talk about how he wears essentially like he has his pants are of a grayish white wool. They're a cotton hybrid. They're patterned like corduroys. And so when you look at the character, you can see on his left shoulder here, it's our right. When you look at the right shoulder, again, it's really the left, but again, when you look at the right, you can see the silver moon armor there, and then on his left shoulder, again, really his right, you see the karakaro, and then underneath his shirt, you can see the adorned coat, and then like those what he's wearing is adorned coat, so that big old collar that comes up to his neck, that whole thing is an adorned coat, and of course above him you see a knight of ℭ𝔢𝔢, and that's the ℭ𝔢𝔢 like regalia or crest, and then you see the ℑ𝔢𝔢𝔠𝔬𝔫 crest. But again, that's what I'm talking about. So now I want to talk about how you can really think about how when you reread your work and you see things that are missing, essentially, or you see things that are like, your story will tell you what it wants, what's hungry for. It will tell you what it needs. The same thing can be done when you look at your characters. So how do we capture that in writing? Well, we look at the description pulled right from the excerpt here. Warwick has been described as a mix of charisma and poison. While silent, reserved, and withdrawn, he is quite the charmer and well-spoken. Though annoy him, and you'll be met with a remark that carries a sting beside it. His words can sting and come off cold, but he's not intentionally hurting people. It's for a defense mechanism. While one could argue that he's a child or acts childish, and they wouldn't be wrong, and while that may be true to some extent, he is very defensive about his feelings. But what about this other facet to him, right? We can't just make him one-dimensional. The side of him that is a natural-born leader, the voice of reason, power, and courage. This side of him where he can empower those around him. I don't know why it's sight. Should have been side. I suppose autocorrect is, or Google, or not Google, Microsoft's autocorrect is a little wonky. Even though this side of him is only shown to those who gain his trust and become his friends, though occasionally when needed or in neutral times, when he's at a gala or a party, even a public event, you'll see him blend his mix of reserve and defense with charismatic personality and great leadership style persona. Silent, reserved, and withdrawn. Around those he isn't able to read just yet, but once judgment is made and spent on how he views the person, he will show you his beacon of hope in a person or a forked tongue and words that sting. Hard. So, again, when you write your character, it's going to literally tell you how to write your character. So when you're sitting there going, he's, we'll say, another one of my characters from Infinity Hero, will say, his name is ℏ𝔢𝔢𝔠𝔬𝔫. So ℏ𝔢𝔢𝔬𝔫, he's this boyish, he's this boyish scientist that works in the quantum physics department at Thermotrix, and he does this, that, and the other, and he has this type of personality, and he talks this way, and when he's around girls, he's shy, and he rubs the back of his neck. When you write these things, and everybody does it, when you write these things, everyone's like, oh my god, that's such a cute character. But what you don't understand is you're actually writing your guide for how to write the character. Like this description here is, and it's a little abstracted thought, but just hear me out. This description here, this is your guide. So when you're actually writing your story, you'll know that Warwick is supposed to be written, kind of as a bit of a brat. He's a brat. He's a little selfish. He can be toxic. If he wants to, he can be completely condescending. He can be a complete asshole. And he has this sting about him, this sense of anew. And so when someone says something, he may be like, yeah, and is it a problem to you? Because I could solve it. And then someone's like, whoa, easy, relax. Hey, I was just asking a question. Did you think you could ask that question somewhere else, maybe? Like that's, now you kind of know. But if somebody were to be nice around him, he'd be like, hey, thanks. I could really use that. Oh, hey, parfaits. You want to get some? They're not too far from here, right? Like, so you kind of know how to do things. So when you're actually writing your story, you have to look back at what you wrote so that you know how to write. I know it sounds very like, well, duh, but it's true. It's kind of hard to explain unless you're physically doing it. So what I always do to get people to understand it is this. Write out a character. So write out a character, doesn't matter what type. And then when you're done talking about their attributes, go write a scene with that character. Now, every time they speak, you have to look back at how you wrote the character and then look at the scene and judge how that character should talk based on the context of the scene, what's going on in it, and also what are the different things that are surrounding the scene, and what is what's the attitude of the scene, meaning like, are they in a fight, are they not in a fight, are they just talking to somebody, what is it? This is what I'm talking about. And you have to go back, and when you do that, you'll say, okay, I should probably write him greeting this character this way because this character means this to him. Therefore, when I look back at what I wrote, it will sound like this, not like what I've written. And that's the key. I know it sounds like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I'm telling you, do that exercise and you'll understand. Write a character, write their attributes like I have here. A mix of charisma and poison, silent, reserved, kind of smooth talker, but he's got a lot of personality. He's got a lot of charisma, but he can be very bratty. He can be very entitled. He can make a bit of a scene if he doesn't get what he wants, etc. And his words sting and they do hurt. But when he's around people that he trusts, and when he's around friends, and when he's around family, specifically Phelan or his mother, ℑ𝔞𝔯𝔞𝔯𝔞, he can, in fact, be a lot kinder and a lot softer. And he could be very uplifting. And so, when you write a character and their attributes, just write a scene, and then the character has to act accordingly in that scene. And then every time you're about to write something, you go, well, let me just check this. And then you'll say, oh, okay, so he couldn't say X, Y, and Z in this particular tone because he's got the thing, whatever it is. You'll say, fuck, I should have wrote like this. And that's the key. That's the key. That's how you do it. That's the secret. So when we look at a lot of characters, we have to think about their motivations and goals. So Warwick intends to save Adluna and hopefully Galahheim from the chaos that's erupted to within the past 5 years, and to finally put a blade in his uncle Dreyfus. And he wants to create the bloodiest death one can imagine for what he did to his father, and also what's suspected of him, which is that he knocked up. The two things that. Suspected of him, his father, being that he had the affair, and two, that Dreyfus was the one that set everything in motion to take over the throne. So we also have to look at strengths. So behind his reserved exterior and this almost alienated vibe, Warwick speaks incredibly well and is greatly educated. He's very cunning. He can lie to people, and he can completely do a 180, and he'll have no problem about it. He's very cunning, and he's very clever. And he can read people like a book, and he knows if someone's up to no good or not, but he'll just pretend like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you have any parfaits? Because I could go for a parfait. Like, Warwick, you know that this guy's a bastard. You guys, you know he's up to no good. But like, he'll pretend it, or what he'll do is he'll say, okay, so somebody's up to something. Well, here's what I'm going to do to screw him over, and I'm going to pretend like I don't know about it. He can be very cunning. He's incredibly skilled in combat because he was trained from a very young age, and he's a natural-born leader. He is a prolific board game enthusiast and avid collector. So, you kind of get to see these things, and you can use these small little details, like how he's a board game enthusiast and avid collector. You could use these things when you're writing a kind of, I don't want to use the word dull scenes, but when you're doing scenes that will, that really show that he's smart. So, for example, let's say he's put in a really tight position and he has to make a choice. Well, because he's a prolific board game enthusiast, and card game enthusiast, he's probably been in situations that weren't particularly favorable. So you would want to mimic that because he's a good board game enthusiast, and because that he's really into board games and card games, and because he likes to play a lot of games, he's probably really good at, like, party games, for example, or he's probably really good at card games, or he's probably really good at something that would be entertaining. And then you can use that to write a variety of different scenes. Same thing with being greatly educated, cunning, and skilled in combat. Use these traits when applicable. You can't just use them everywhere. But use them when applicable. But of course, we don't want to have Mary Sue characters and Gary Sue and fucking Billy Sue, and we don't want to have any Billy Badasses. We don't want to have any Jackass Johns. We don't want to have any Mary Sue, Gary Sue, Larry Sue. We don't want to have any of the people who are these cookie cutter, I could never do wrong. You don't want to have these characters that don't have any flaws, right? So, for example, my character ℏ𝔢𝔞𝔯𝔢𝔬𝔫, ℏ𝔢𝔞𝔯𝔢𝔬𝔫, ℏ𝔢𝔞𝔯𝔢𝔬𝔫. Everybody just calls him Graves for short. So ℏ𝔢𝔞𝔯𝔢𝔬𝔫, not JONESJOANS. So ℏ𝔢𝔞𝔯𝔢𝔬𝔫. So Graveson, he's second in command in the biker crew ℏ𝔢𝔞𝔯𝔢𝔬𝔫, which is a biker club, but motorcycle gang that all has dinosaur powers. So there's a lot of good things about him. There's a lot of good things about him, but he also has a really bad temper. He can flick the switch and he will go berserk. So not as bad as Rex. Rex is the leader. Graveson is more of a controlled. Well, he can become a complete loose cannon, but a complete loose cannon with a mission and a warpath. Rex, on the other hand, doesn't care what happens. Well, both of them can be just as like. Both of them could destroy a city if they wanted to, and both of them could just be incredibly like. The two of them could just be absolute like walking tanks. However, the difference is, even though Graveson could be just as catastrophic and a loose cannon and volatile as Rex, Graveson will do it for the cause and do it for the mission and do it for the state. Rex will do it because he's a tyrant, because he's an asshole, because he wants to show dominance, because he's the alpha male, because he is the Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? His real name is Alec Rise, RHYZEAALEC. So Alec Rise, but of course, because of extinction, like real biker crews, everybody's got a nickname so that they can't be identified by the police, and also because it's a club, everybody's got nicknames so you can identify people quickly, etc. And also because it's part of your identity, so everybody's got a different nickname. You got Sarah for Triceratops, that's Graves and Jones. You have Rex, like a T-Rex, for Alec Rise, and then you also have Blake Carter, who's supposed to be Stego, for Stegosaurus, and you have Jared Torres, who's Bronto, like Brontosaurus, and then of course we also have Matt, Matt something. He's Raptor. He doesn't come up much in the story, but he is there. He plays a certain. He does play a decent role, not too heavy. But anyways, you want to have some weaknesses and you want to have some flaws because characters need those. Even my own ℏ𝔢𝔢𝔢𝔬𝔫, he's not supposed to be. He's the face of the Moonlight Chronicles, and ℏ𝔢𝔢𝔢𝔢, so he's supposed to be the hero of the franchise. But guess what? He likes to get drunk off Moon Brews. Moon Brew, I'll put a picture up on the screen now. So Moon Brew is essentially an alcoholic milkshake. You won't taste the alcohol, but it's in there. And there's also Maid Brew, which is the non-alcoholic, the virgin variant. So you have a male and female variant, but it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl. You can have it alcoholic or non-alcoholic. But Kite will have it alcoholic, and he will he'll drink a ton of those things. He'll get wasted. He'll get drunk. But he's supposed to be this upstanding legionnaire, which essentially are these elite fighters that protect the world of Ekon, specifically the land of Crystalla, and Sunset Kingdom, from like the darkness and from monsters and from half-lights, which are these essentially these monsters that come from the eclipse because of a big lore that will take quite a while to explain. But he's supposed to be this hero, and he is in every single way possible. But one of his flaws is that, leave him unattended at a tavern, he's gonna need a ride home. He's gonna need a ride home. I mean, he's gonna be passed out, or he's gonna be tripping over himself. I mean, Cyrus Silvermaid's had to go, Jesus Christ, Kite, how many of these things did you drink? And he's like, I don't know. And he's tripping over himself. He's falling all over the place, knocking furniture over. And Cyrus is like, Jesus. So like, that's what I'm saying is you have to give your characters some weaknesses. You have to, because if you don't, then you're really just holding yourself back, and people will get very turned off very quickly if you don't have any weaknesses for your character. So when we look at Warwick, once again, Warwick is easily needled, and he can be quick to temper and flare up in wanting to settle disputes with violence and other means to assert dominance, which, again, that's part of the Riverbelt culture, that's part of how the Luminaries are, but specifically within the Riverbelt clan, you get a trial by resolve, which essentially just means, like, I'm going to challenge you to a fight to the death. Normally, those are reserved for very big issues, but you can, if you want to be an asshole, you could go and just because someone talks shit, like, so for example, normally, if you challenge someone trial by resolve, it has to be something big. So for example, if I'm going to challenge you to the throne, and we have a debate, and we cannot settle on an agreement as to why I should be on the throne and not you, I could say, well, then I challenge you to trial by resolve. Which means if you kill me, then it is what it is. And congratulations, you solidified yourself on the throne once more. However, if you die, then I get that spot. Another thing could be where if you have again, it could just be like a debate. Like if you're trying to prove that your point is more correct than somebody else, you could do a trial by resolve. Another thing is in the court system specifically, it's really reserved for the court system, really. In the way that they handle things, the way they marshal things out is, let's say that there's a really big dispute, and there's a lot of honor that's being slandered, there's a lot of names being called, there's a lot of family lineage being called into question, or there's a lot of illegitimacy being thrown around, or there's a lot of think of the most heated court battle you could think of where people are just pulling out. You know what's a good example? Think of a really heated court battle where people are just taking out every piece of evidence they could possibly find. And it's also your ex-girlfriend or your ex-boyfriend, and you're having this huge fight. That's the court system would say, okay, well, the way we're going to solve this is a trial by resolve. If you kill him and survive, or you kill her, or however it is, him and him, her and her and him, whatever it is, whatever the pairing is, if you survive, then your record of account was correct. If you don't survive, then his or her record of account was correct, and that will be the final verdict. So Warwick will tend to abuse the solving with violence solution. He'll tend to abuse that, and whenever somebody says something, if it needles him, he'll jump up and he'll be like, okay, well, it looks like I'll have to kill you for that. And that shows traits of how dictatorial he could be. But of course, we know he's not going to be, because he's the protagonist, and he's going to be, a very benevolent and very beloved ruler. But that's not the point. The point is that he'll settle disputes with violence or other means to assert dominance when he feels the need to protect himself from the naysayers or people who rub him the wrong way. Although it's probably smart. I said run him the wrong way instead of rub him the wrong way, because that I could see some people going, ooh, that's a dirty thought. Anyways, even if people are joking, he might find it hurtful, right? So, though they may explain, for rest assured, he still holds a very jaded view, especially with the things that have happened to him in his childhood and his life. Warwick is also not the strongest of men. And again, while he's toned, he's not by any means in shape to the muscle mass or body physique of the Firehearts. And those guys are basically like Spartans, pretty much. Those guys are jacked. Anyways, it causes him to have to rely on speed, swiftness, magic, and combo attacks in order to make up for his lack of muscle. Warwick has a soft spot for parfaits, maybe a little too much. Ever since he was a kid, they had been his favorite dessert or snack, and that he's fell in love with. Oh, so sorry if you can hear it. My cat is causing up a storm. I'm gonna see if I can. No, are we done? Okay, cool. I love him, but I didn't want meowing in the mic like meow. I'm fun. Anyways, because he has a soft spot for parfaits and he fell in love with them as a snack and dessert for a kid, it's joked he'll do almost anything for a parfait. And it's kind of true. One could actually easily bribe him with one, with one or several even. Though he has a bad habit of getting sick off them. So when I was writing the game, one of the things that I thought about, and it's actually still in the document, the story for the game, is he actually eats a bunch of parfaits, and then when he's in the car, he actually throws up in the car and he gets sick because he ate all these parfaits, and he actually throws up because he just gorged on parfaits. But he'll still eat them anyway. He absolutely loves parfaits. And again, you could easily bribe him with one or several. Though he's a bad habit of getting sick off them, he loves to eat the mega parfaits, which essentially are these like towering parfaits. Huge giant ones that are loaded with fruits and sweets, chocolate, and whipped cream. If you want to kind of a look at, what I'm talking about, go on to YouTube and type in like Japanese street food parfait compilation videos, or go look at like South Korean street food parfait videos, or just like bakeries or whatever, and you'll see that they have like these towering parfaits. This is what I'm kind of talking about. And also, they're a lot more gourmet and fancy than they are here in the States, unfortunately, but that's a whole different conversation. Anyways, they're filled with fruits and sweets, chocolate, whipped cream. He eats the very last crumble of the crushed whatever at the bottom of the glass vase. Like, dude loves some parfait. Lastly, Warwick is cautious about his dating life and isn't open to many people. He bottles his emotions and puts on a strong exterior. Of course, there are times where he does truly open up. These are in front of people that he cares about the most, or when he needs to show that he can be trusted. Bonding with people has always been very hard for him, and he ends up pushing more people away than bringing them in. This is, of course, after the death of his father. But when he does let people in, he has a tendency to overshare and to make a venting session out of it, which he rightfully deserves, but feels awkward afterwards, and then he pushes those same people he just let in away, and he's denying he'd ever be so weak around others. On top, and he'll even actually gaslight. He'll actually do it. He'll like gaslight you. So like if he like trauma dumps, or if he goes on like a therapy session, or like if he lets out a lot of what he's thinking inside, what happens is he'll feel really awkward about it, and then the other person's gonna want to reassure him that it's okay. Well, regardless if it's out of politeness or if it's because, maybe it's a girl and she's like, it's okay, you can trust me, like you and I are a thing. He'll gaslight and he'll pretend like he'll gaslight and pretend that I don't know what you're talking about. Like I would never be so weak to like tell you such things. I was only saying that because you needed the wisdom or something. Like he'll gaslight, but really in reality it's he needed it, but he doesn't want to let people know that he needed it because it's like, wow, look at you. You can't be a strong ruler like your father. Anyways, on top of this flaw, it gains him charisma and attraction, which causes him more attention, which comes for better or worse. So again, these are weaknesses, but you can use them interchangeably. It's all about how you decide to write them. But of course, because these are weaknesses, you want to show that he has temptation towards parfaits, or that he likes parfaits, or that you want to show that, if he's trying, or like if there's a girl trying to be intimate with him, and in the sense of trying to get him to open up, he may be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I would never tell you that. So that's what I'm saying, is you wanna really show the character as being multifaceted, and don't be afraid to show some weaknesses, because when we look at Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, Noctis was kind of the same way. I mean, when we look at Riku from Kingdom Hearts, I mean, if we really want to get technical, yes, Ansem was the main antagonist of Kingdom Hearts 1, but really it was Riku. And that's something we still think about is Riku. Because from the very beginning, Riku was, his heart was full of hate and jealousy and darkness and envy of Sora. And through it all, like, we remember all these things about him that are so terrible. But even though he's changed for the better, Tetsuya Nomura still wrote him as acting out on a very angry, jealous, broken, hurt, envious, filled with darkness heart. And so that's something you want to write with your characters as well. Allow them to have weaknesses and let them use their weaknesses as part of their character traits, because they will become beloved in the end. So you should do that. And you can also add personalization and add character out of character. So what does this mean? So adding seemingly out of character talents, traits, or abilities make for a more realistic, charismatic, intriguing, and interesting character that'll get the reader or audience hooked. It's actually proven, by the way. Try adding some out of character talents to characters that you wouldn't think would do something like that. By default, showing only one side of a character is what is presented up front. However, as you go deeper into the narrative, you can surprise your audience with things that they would not expect. Having multifaceted characters will always score you character net points, right? It will always score you net points. It will always net you character development points. It will always do it. Okay? Please make your characters multifaceted. Please make your characters not just one type of dimension. You need to give them layers, okay? Like onions. There was a chick who told a friend of mine, who told me, people are like onions. They come in layers. At the time, I told her she was fucking retarded. I thought she was stupid, because in my life, I have only been around very shallow people. But when I got to find better people, I realized that they do, in fact, come in layers. And so it's the same thing here. So Ethan Carter, he's a bank robber in American Dollar, which, by the way, American Dollar, American Hustle, and American Empire, they're all within I don't know what I call it, but it's all like in the same anthology, I suppose. Anyways, Ethan Carter, he's a bank robber, but he really likes baseball. So sometimes he'll have grenades, and what he'll do is he'll bore open a baseball, and he'll tuck the grenade in a baseball. So he has a baseball grenade like in Fallout. And he's a fast runner. He'll use baseball quotes in dialogue or with or without or other hostile or non-hostile characters. So for example, he'll say, "All right, assholes, let's play ball." Right? And then that's when he'll start shooting, at cops or other rival bank robber crews or whoever is causing a problem and causing, in his way. But when we look at Harper Callum, he's a psychopathic kingpin. He's basically Pagan Ming meets Tony Montana. It's pretty much who he is. But the thing is, he plays the clarinet, and he likes going to the fair, and his favorite ride is the Ferris wheel. Of course, there's a lot of symbolism here, because the Ferris wheel represents also the wheel of life, right? You start at the bottom, and then you climb all the way to the top, and then, of course, like Scarface, he was at the bottom, he went all the way to the top, and then he was on the decline, then he was killed, and he's at the bottom again, dead. But his favorite ride is the Ferris wheel, because also you get to rise above everybody else and stay at the top, and you get to overlook everything. But he also likes the clarinet. And the clarinet, it shows that there's a lot of, almost like a musically inclined, talented individual behind someone who could be so sociopathic and psychopathic. When we look at Morgan Gray, he's an ex-guerrilla warfighter from a group called Homestead. And essentially he fights the government. Well, he did fight the government in a rebellion that lost, but he took part in it either way. It was a resistance. But thing is, you wouldn't believe it, but he's actually a meteorologist. So he's into meteorology, and he likes pool, billiards, and he likes making stuffed animals. And we'll talk about why. When we look at Warwick Leon Riverbelt, again, he's an emperor, but what does he like? He likes origami, board games, making desserts. And in Emerald Gardens, it's actually written that Warwick is sitting in the back of his seat, and then he is, I forget exactly who, I believe it's his bodyguard, is driving the car, and and his brother Phelan's beside him, and he has origami, and he's making a like a bird of some kind, and then he folds it, and then with magic he'll cup his hands, and then he'll raise it to the sky, and then the origami bird will go fly, and turns out he's actually sending a letter to somebody. And I think it's like some girl, or maybe it's his mother back home, or I know it's a female character of some sort. I would have to go look at my lore notes. But that being said, when we look at James Callahan, he's a Hollywood actor, but he's also a vigilante. He also plays Ethan Carter because American Hustle and American Hustle, American Dollar, and American Empire. Even though they are in an anthology, they were originally written as television shows that T.J. Callender plays in and James Callahan plays in. James Callahan plays in American Dollar and American Empire. T.J. Callender plays in American Hustle, which is the adaptation for the video game, because those are TV shows written for the universe. But there's a lot of like Inception going on with my Vigilance universe. But anyways, he likes baseball, but you also wouldn't think that this vigilante also likes gourmet desserts and gourmet foods and baking, but he does. And these things are seemingly out of character, but they add so much depth to the character. They add so much depth. They add a lot. They add so much. So they add so much more to the character, because when you have out of character traits, they can work in the character's favor. Ethan Carter, he's a bank robber, right? So he likes baseball. Maybe he carries around a few baseball grenades because he likes a fast runner. Because he's a fast runner, he'll slide behind cover like he's sliding into a base. He uses baseball quotes, dialogued with or without hostile aggression. This adds character, right? Harper Kellum, he's a psychopathic kingpin, but he plays the clarinet. It shows a calm, thoughtful, artistic, musically inclined talent other than this ruthless kingpin who goes around like chopping people up with a chainsaw and using an M4 all the time. I mean, again, Pagan Ming meets Tony Montana. When we look at Morgan Gray, he was a meteorologist, and he also makes stuffed animals, and he's good at pool. But what do these things have to do? Well, he knows geology, weather patterns, the best times to strike. He knows where to go during weather inclement, right? These are things that a meteorologist would know. And these are things that are important because when he's going up against his own government because he believes he was priced out of life, then what happens is that these things come in handy and they make him an interesting character. And the reason why that he makes stuffed animals is because it shows that he has patience, or it shows that he's at least working on it, because he has severe anger issues with slight post-traumatic stress disorder. But it shows that he has this patience and this softer side to him that's not normally shown. And because what's normally shown is that he's always punching somebody out, or he's always in a bad mood, or he always feels lost in society, or he just feels like, what's the point? And with being good at pool shows that he's strategic and handles potentially bad positioning well, which is a reoccurring theme as a guerrilla warfighter. Because again, as a guerrilla warfighter, when you're going up against a larger force, you're always going to be put in the corner. You're always going to have the lower hand, the underhand. You're always going to, be the underdog. You're always going to have to be in some awkward position that, you're going to get fucked by. And it sucks. And that's the point. But because he's really good at pool, it shows that he's used to being in these really not so advantageous positions, and these not so advantageous positions show that he can handle the pressure. And if you can replicate that during the different things that he does, like whether he's going out and fighting, I don't know why I said that like a question. I'm sorry, but with the different things that he does, such as going out and fighting against a tyrannical government in his universe, which by the way also was another movie in the Vigilance universe. It's a whole thing. Like I should just make an entire video on that by itself. But point is that it really is it really is a matter of having a layered character. And I hate to break it to you, but if you're not going to have a layered character, then scrap the character. That sounds hostile and that sounds terrible, but it's honestly true. I mean, look at how many video games have come out within the past decade that are all so generic or one-dimensional characters, and you just don't care for them at all. And that's because there's no layering to the character. Nico Bellic, there was layering. Sora, there was layering. Sly Cooper, there was layering. I mean, Sly Cooper even told Carmelita, look, I'll give up like my family art form, which is thievery, for you. And and also if you play the games, consecutively he gets more and more attracted to Carmelita, and he's like, maybe I'll give it up. All right, maybe my heart's starting to go soft. Maybe I'm not this hard thief after all. And so you have to write layered characters. If you don't do that, don't write the character, unless they're an NPC or they're just a background character or they only pop up a few times. I mean, supporting characters, you don't really have to have them layered, but again, if it's a video game, it should. If it's a movie, it should. If it's a TV show, perhaps. But again, it all depends. Like a shopkeeper that you see occasionally within the series who's a prominent figure, for example, like in a movie or something or a video game, maybe, but it really all depends. And of course, we have Warwick, and who doesn't love a good dessert? People like to receive physically made gifts like origami is a good example. And playing board games shows that he's brave enough to lose, but smart enough to win. And that's a big facet here when it comes to being an emperor, is you're brave enough to say, I may lose this, but I'm smart enough to know how to win. And so these are things that you have to replicate in your writing. Again, your story is a mirror which stares at you back. Whether you're writing a character or whether you're writing a world, whether you're writing lore, a character description, it does not matter. Whatever you are writing, it is going to objectively look at you and say, this is what needs to be filled in. This is what I want. This is how it needs to be. When you're writing your story, you're writing a guide. And that guide is going to show you what are the different things you need to add in order to make this story come to life. It is the cauldron that you are looking into. It is talking to you, telling you, give me these ingredients and I will make this potion. It is the mirror on the wall telling you, in order to be the fairest of them all, you need to lose weight. But anyways, that's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so going back to this slide, your characters, the objects, the setting, story, the place, the theme, the clothes, the colors, the music, the visuals, they should all mirror the story. And that's the thing, right? You should be able to tell your story with all elements without saying a word. Music tells a story without words. Characters tell the story through everything they do and say. Objects represent motifs or symbolic representations of your story. Your world is a mirror to everything. And you have to make sure it is constantly mirroring whatever it is that is being said or shown to the audience. So, how does this relate to the world? That's a good question. And by the way, I'll just go back. So at the top here, we have the crest for ℭ𝔠𝔞𝔯𝔞𝔠𝔱. At the bottom here, we see a portion of the crest for the Eldritch Empire. On the right-hand side, we see another crest for ℍ𝔢𝔢. And on the left-hand side here, we see the crest for the Fireheart clan. So when we look back at the plotline of Emerald Gardens, it's been 5 years now since Somnus, the era in which people refer to when the Emperor was asleep for half a decade. In that time, the world of Galahheim has greatly shifted. Balin is now Emperor and had been for 5 years and is taking duties of emperorship while his mother is the voice that talks to the people. She deals with the public while he deals with the larger game of chess. Wars have broken out between some of the 8 kingdoms and political games have gotten increasingly out of control. And above all, in the center of Serenity Savannah, a gigantic crater is formed, and from it, a giant staircase rises to the heavens. There's a giant pearly gate, the gate to Emerald Gardens. The Emperor has awakened, and Galahheim is in chaos. While he regains his strength to set out on a journey shown in the tarot cards long before his own life began, other stories begin. But just a recap, I wrote that because there's a lot I could write during the time that Warwick was asleep. For now, we rejoice that Emperor Warwick Leon Riverbelt has awakened and his destiny to set things right begins. So, character immersion and the world you created. Make it believable that these characters are in the world that they're actually in. We must assume that other characters would pose the same logic that we would had we never been exposed to something new from somewhere else. I know there's a lot of arrows here, but allow me to just explain. So in D-Link, ℍ𝔥𝔞𝔯𝔞𝔠𝔱𝔢𝔯 loses his law books. He had a law book, or excuse me, he had several law books in his bag, or at least one of them. And so he lost them, and he has no idea where they are. And he says, they cost me 26,484 yen. And then he says, and he had 5 of them, so that's 132,420 yen. And he says yen, but ℧𝔬𝔯𝔞 says, huh? What? That sounds like a lot. The hell is yen? ℧𝔬𝔞 wouldn't know what the hell yen is. He wouldn't know, because in this world that ℍ𝔥𝔞𝔯𝔞 is in, they wouldn't. No one says yen. Nobody knows what the Japanese currency is. And then later on in the volume, when ℍ𝔥𝔞𝔯𝔞 talks about raising, which is a legal tactic, by the way, essentially it's when a group wants to extort a business, but because the business won't give them the money for extortion, what they do is they burn down the business, and then what they say is, well, we can rebuild it for you, but in turn, there's two things, rather. Building in question, so rather the shop owner or store owner or whatever, could be a home, but the person that owns the property, if the insurance, I have to be very specific. Okay, so raising essentially is when an organized crime syndicate, or like a loan shark or the mob or whatever, even though what mob, right? So when an organization that is illegal wants a certain business, typically it's a business, but it could be a plot of land or like a marina for boats. It doesn't matter. It's just once a business, like a bakery or whatever. What happens is they'll usually extort the owner or the employees. If the owner employees tell them no, what they will do is they will then burn down or destroy the building. The building will need to be repaired. So either the insurance company has to pay for it, therefore the premium then goes up, right? And then they'll just do it again. And then the shop owner will be forced to have to close. Or what they do is they'll destroy it, and they'll say, okay, we will give you the money to rebuild it, but in return, you have to pay us, not just back for rebuilding it, but you'll have to pay us back in extortion fees. Like, you'll have to pay us back, like, protection money, for example. And that's a very common tactic that the Yakuza in real life did during the 1980s and 90s, where they would go into antique stores, or they would go into electronic stores, or they would go into parlors, smut parlors, sex parlors, or they would go into jewelry stores, or wherever was making a lot of money during the 80s and 90s of the Japanese economic boom. What would happen is they would tear the place up, and what would happen is the store owners would rather not give in, but of course at the time they were very scared, so they would say yes. But if they said no, well, then they would torch the place, and then because there's so much money to be paid, they would just say, I'll pay the Yakuza, who could do it for cheaper, better, and faster than having to pay the insurance, but now I'm in debt to them. So ℍ𝔥𝔞𝔯𝔞𝔠𝔱𝔢𝔯, because he's from Japan, he will bring this up, and he says, raising is an illegal tactic in which an individual or group uses extreme measures to secure an area only to profit off it later. Again, for example, going to a bakery, trashing it, burning it down, forcing the owner to rather pay up in extortion fees, and then you rebuild it yourself to then profit off it, or you run them dry of premiums. ℧𝔬𝔞 still has no idea what the hell he's talking about, so he says, first it's yen, now ℧𝔬𝔞 doesn't pronounce his INGs, his ings, he always says ins, so like, what you doing, instead of doing, what you doing, or I'm walking, instead of walking, right? So he says, first it's yen, now it's raisin. And then he says, you sure you're not just making up words, ℍ𝔥𝔞𝔯𝔞𝔠𝔱𝔢𝔯? These are things that you should add to your story because it shows immersion. Characters wouldn't know what yen is if they're not from Japan. And that's something that you have to put in. A lot of writers will just assume that the characters know it because you know it. But the fact is, these characters don't know it. Again, characters are people. They wouldn't know something if you don't know what they're talking about. So I'm going to end it here because now we get to talk about explanation versus justification, and we talk about exposition, and we talk about your reasoning and the logic behind it. But that's where we're going to leave it, because then we get into like a whole, as you can see, we get into a whole thing, and there's lots of charts and lots of graphs and circled content. So anyways, that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Thank you all so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, children of all ages. It really does mean a lot. If you did, in fact, enjoy this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. I don't typically ask that. It's the first time I've ever asked that here on the channel. But make sure that you give it a thumbs up. And if you know somebody who is struggling to be a creative writer, make sure to send this video their way. Or if you are a creative writer yourself, make sure to save this video and make sure to come back to it each time that you need a little help when you're in the middle of your creative writing journey. That being said, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down in the comment section below. I would love to talk to you guys, and I would like to help you out with that. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks, guys.